Hello, and once again a big welcome to the White Dog Garage YouTube channel. My name is Bob, and in this episode I want to talk about metal cut-off saws. In particular, abrasive cut-off saws and cold cut saws, and focusing on the two that I have in my workshop. So this is my abrasive cut-off saw. It is a Makita unit. I've had it for close to 40 years now. It's a very reliable unit. Uses an abrasive blade, 14 inches in diameter. They start off at 14 inches, and as you use them up they get smaller and smaller in diameter until you're down to about there, and that's when you change the blade. This one's 2100 watts, about 2.1 kilowatt. It runs at 3800 RPM. The vise allows you to run between 0 and 45 degree cut, and it's quite a portable unit. What are the advantages of it? Well, I guess the obvious one is it's cheaper to buy, a lot cheaper to buy than the cold cut saw. It is tolerant of uneven surfaces. Because it's essentially a grinder on steroids, it tends to grind down any unevenness and get its smooth edge in double quick time. Or if there's ridges, it will just keep going across the ridges. Very tolerant of that. I would never suggest this, but I certainly, back in the day, they were often used without any clamping. I'll tell you a story of when I started out in the engineering works where I was at. The leading hand was cutting a piece of metal just on an angle. He hadn't even bothered to move the fence, and he was hand holding it, and of course it snagged and dragged his hand in and cut all the way up here. Very ugly. You should never hold it with your hand, but plenty of people over the years have got away with holding it with their hand because it is a more gentle cutting action as opposed to the cold cut saw where those teeth just are grabbing all the time. The reason it tends to be a bit forgiving is that there's a little bit of flex in the blade, and that's why it's forgiving of a rough surface, an undulating surface. This sort of blade will move to tolerate it. Now, what are the disadvantages? Well, the first one is the blade diameter reduces with every cut because you're wearing away blade material as well as material you're cutting. You take it gentle, it takes a while, but it can be annoying if you're doing particularly big cuts at the limit of the machine, so that you might, I don't know, cut so many pieces and then you'll have to start rotating the pieces in the vise. The other thing is it doesn't, I find anyhow, it can do an accurate cut, and if you take it slow and easy and gentle, you can get a reasonably accurate cut, but it doesn't tend to do quite an accurate cut, and the reason for that is the same reason it tolerates a rough surface, which is that the blade can move. If you push down hard, the blade will start to move slightly, bending as you're going down. So if you take it easy, you can get it to stay reasonably in line, but often with these things you're just trying to chop through the stuff quick. The other thing is it's not particularly good on solid metal. Okay for, say, I don't know, let's say half inch, 13mm up to about that steel bar, quite good on that. But once you start to get thicker than that, it has to work awful hard to cut through it, because it relies on heating up the metal, braiding it away, but it needs that metal to get quite hot. But of course the problem becomes that when you've got a big solid piece, you've got a fair amount of heat transfer away from the cut side, and that means it's constantly trying to warm that cut side, and the abrasion is just not happening. This is my cold cut saw. It's a Renegade Industrial model. Renegade Industrial is the house brand of trade tools. Once again, I'll just make the proviso that Trade Tools not contributed to the video, and Trade Tools does not contribute to the channel. I do like their tools. They're quite reliable. In all the years that I've been buying their tools, I don't think I've had any problems at all. So this one here, probably its biggest feature is it's about 2/3 to half the price of the big name units, you know, yellow, blue, red, green, so on. It is a 14-inch diameter blade as well, 355 millimeters. It's a tooth blade, in this case 72 teeth. It spins at 1000 RPM, and the motor is 2300 watts, 2.3 kilowatts. It has an adjustable vise between 0 and 45 degrees that you can do the cut on. So what are the big advantages of the cold cut saw? Well, the first one is that they do accurate cuts. That means that when you set up your line and you bring the saw down, it will cut exactly to that line. Abrasive saws can wander. The second thing is the blade diameter remains constant. So if you're cutting, say, 100 millimeter 4-inch material, there's no blade wear. So when you cut the first one, that's good. When you cut the 20th one, your blade is still able to cut all the way through without having to reverse it in the machine. The next one is the cut is relatively cold. I guess that's why it's called a cold cut saw. What it means is that when you've made your cut, you can pick up the offcut in your bare hands. You can pick up the cut piece in your bare hands. The other thing is it gives a smooth cut so that there's very little cleanup required. You might need to just run a file across the edges of the cut, but other than that, it's relatively clean, ready to go for the next part of the job. Whereas with the abrasive saw, there tends to be quite a bit of furriness that you need to clean off. So what are the disadvantages? The main disadvantage that I see, apart from the price of course, is that it's very intolerant of uneven material that's going to be cut. And what I mean by that is that it likes to cut into a relatively smooth surface. So if you've got an uneven surface and irregular shape, what you've got is the teeth of the blade is effectively whacking in to that irregular shape until it gets a constant cut. So it's whack, 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 whack. What you've got with that is vibration. If it's not clamped well enough, it can move. The blade is totally intolerant of the object moving. In the 7 years that I've had this one, I'm still using the same blade, and that's another advantage, is that the blades last a lot longer than the abrasive saw's blades. But of course the abrasive saw blade is cheap to replace. The blade in this tungsten tipped is expensive to replace. I understand that the cost of the blade per cut is cheaper on one of these than on the abrasive saw. In the abrasive saw, over 7 years, you would be, with the amount of work that this one's done, you would be using a number of blades. But with this one, it's still on the same blade. I don't regret buying the Renegade Industrial cold cut saw. There are some misgivings that I have with it, and it relates to the vise. I am not a fan of this style of vise where you have a quick release mechanism. I find you have to tighten it up a little bit to get a good clamping action, but it still has a little bit of movement. The Makita just passes through a threaded boss, so it's a lot better from the point of view of tightening up the vise. The other thing with this vise, and this leads us to the broken tooth episode, is that it does have a little bit of flex, and particularly when you're doing an angle cut, and that's how I broke the tooth. So a little bit of flex on the vise, no give in the blade, and it caught the tooth, and suddenly you've got a bit of chatter and you're wondering what's happened. You shut it down and you have a look at your blade and you find that one of the teeth has gone that way. I guess my biggest misgivings is about the vise, but the rest of it has been fine. There's been no problems with the motor. 71.2 instead of 72 teeth, that's fine. I can live with that. But what I like, of course, is the cleanness of the cut, the quickness of how it goes through, and the fact that we'll handle solid material. Most of the time I use a bandsaw for my big solid material, but a few weeks ago I was in a big hurry and needed to cut some big solid material quickly. The bandsaw was just going to take too long, and I thought I'd give this one a go, and I did, and it cut it through like a hot knife through butter. Very nice. The newer one has a similar quick release vise. It's slightly different. It's got some attachments on to make it easier to cut pipe, and it has a little wheel here. It has a cast metal base. I won't say it's cast iron, but the thing is, it is 32 kilos versus 20 kilos for this one. So a little bit of a weight change there. Maybe not as portable, but then I would say it probably doesn't vibrate as much with the heavier base. The replacement model spins a bit faster as well. It's 1500 RPM versus 1000 RPM, and that might be a good reason for having a heavier base and a heavier machine. You're going to have a little bit more vibration. It also has fewer teeth in the blade, 66 versus 72. Not much of a change, but I guess maybe the cuts are not as fine. I'd have to say I have cut aluminium with this, but I normally use my compound miter saw, which is a woodworking tool with a special blade for aluminium to use for particularly aluminium boxing and the like, aluminium pipes. It gives a very precise cut. If you're doing different angles, it's much better at cutting those angles, and of course the fact that you can tilt the blade or move it on a compound miter saw makes it much better. I will show you the difference in cuts, starting with the abrasive saw and a piece of 100 by 50 millimeters, or about 4 by 2 inches rectangular hollow section, sometimes called box section. And we can see there quite a lot of material to clean up, just to clean up the cut. One of the advantages of the cold cut saw is that you don't have as much cleanup. It's quite warm as well, and the other thing you would have noticed is that the blade in this one's a little bit worn. So this is 100mm, almost 4 inches, and because the blade is a bit worn, I've had to change it around to get the remainder of the cut done. Now of course I could have just started with it lying like this, but I just wanted to demonstrate a 100mm 4-inch cut. That shows one of the problems with the abrasive saw, the reduction of blade diameter over successive cuts. A new blade would complete a full 100mm cut in one pass. What I want to show you now is the difficulty in using the abrasive saw to cut thick steel sections. This is a piece of 100 by 50mm channel, and I will start the cut on the wide back section. This one I spent quite a while on trying to cut through. It's quite hot to touch now, and I still haven't cut through it. It's something I would turn over to the bandsaw normally, but we'll see what happens with the cold cut saw. So I've just moved the Makita abrasive cut unit. You can see all the metal filings and dust that it gets. Occasionally you get it all melted together. Moving on to the cold cut saw now, and I'm starting with the same 100 by 50mm rectangular hollow section. Now of course one of the problems with here is the cover. Cover is very necessary because it's so easy to catch a bit of cloth etc. with the turning blade, but it can be a bit of a nuisance in this situation. So this is 100mm, which is in the capacity of the saw, but to get that cut, if I just go to pull it down, the cover won't come out. So I have to lift the cover, and then I start, and then I make the cut. Worth noting too is how much faster the cold cut saw is compared to the abrasive one. It makes a very neat cut, and it's quite cool to touch, in complete contrast to the abrasive cut saw where I couldn't touch the edge without getting my fingers burnt. It does need a little bit of touching up, to clean it up. But if we look back there at the cut-off piece from the abrasive cut saw, you can see the big difference in the cleanliness of the cut. Now put this one back in. So you can see how quick the cold cut saw cut through this metal compared to the abrasive cut saw. And once again, it's quite cool to touch, no great problems there, and the speed at which it cut down. Now, the final bit I'm going to demonstrate here is a piece of 25 by 75 mild steel, maybe 1 inch by 3 inch mild steel, and just see how quickly and easily it goes down through this material. This would take forever with the abrasive cut saw, and to be honest, I would use the bandsaw. So you can see how clean the cut is. It's quite, you can keep your fingers on it. It is warm, but it's not hot enough that you can't touch it. Nice edges, nice cut. You can just quickly run a file over that to clean it up, and it's all good to go. I don't have any big round stock that I want to sacrifice to demonstrate, but you can imagine how well it goes through a piece of 75mm diameter round stock, just as easily as this one. And of course the other thing to notice there is the swarf. Nice little particulate matter, doesn't embed in the wall. It is messy, but it's just a simple matter of cleaning or vacuuming it up. Well, thank you once again for joining me on the White Dog Garage YouTube channel, and I hope this video has been useful to you in making a decision about whether you want to buy one of these saws, a metal cut-off saw, or you might already have an abrasive metal cut-off saw, you're thinking about a cold cut saw. Just because it's a Renegade Industrial one, they're all much the same on both sides, both the abrasive and the cold cut. It's the advantages and disadvantages of each that you need to weigh up in respect of your own workshop requirements. Thank you once again for watching, and I look forward to talking to you in the next episode. Bye.